Hello, everybody. Welcome to the THPStrength podcast. I'm Isaiah Rivera. I jump 50.5 inches in the air, trying to get to 51 with the help of this handsome lad right here, who also coaches a lot of athletes at THP. And today we're going to be talking about squatting and its role in vertical jump training. If you've watched any of my training, you've seen a lot of squatting. And we're going to explain to you why it's so helpful, variations, downsides, benefits, personal experiences. We're going to go into the nitty gritty of it. All right. So I guess how has I'm going to ask you a question, John. How has your lens on squatting changed from you being a wee lad to you being a young coach to you being a tenured coach as you are now?
Oh, this is actually probably one of the best questions I've ever gotten. So when I was young, when I was like 13, 14 years old, I think I was more invested in plyos. I think squatting I viewed as valuable, and I knew it would help my vertical and getting stronger. But I was more on the erring on the side of plyos and stuff like that. When I was in high school, it was more about, oh, what's your squat? What's your squat? Yeah, but what was your depth? What was your depth? Was it a box squat? Was it a full squat? Was it to parallel? Did you at least hit parallel? That was always kind of the narrative at that time. And I knew that having stronger legs meant that you were probably going to be a better athlete. Like that was intuitive to me. So I always viewed that as important. But when I started squatting myself, I really struggled with depth. I could never, no matter what I did, I could not get range of motion, keep my back flat, push the hips back. Like it just wasn't possible for me. As I got older, I realized that the range of motion was obviously mobility related. And this was probably like high school or so. And when I would try to deep squat, I would just fold my low back. And that was actually one of the worst back injuries I had when I was like 16 is the program said deep in all caps. So I was like, all right, fine, I'll deep squat. At that time, I was probably half squatting like 335, maybe just above a half squat, like above parallel. And so I tried a deep squat for the first time, but I was working off my half squat max. It was like 265. And I folded like a lawn chair. My back was really fucked up. I think it's one of the times I probably herniated a disc doing that, and I had nerve pain as a result, like sciatica. So I think that taught me like, wow, my mobility is dog shit, and I need to be careful when I do this. And I'm not going to deep squat anymore because I messed myself up. So then I saw a lot of performance improvement whenever I was in high school and squatting a lot, but I actually saw my elasticity get quite a bit worse. So I gained a lot of muscle mass. I wasn't getting that much faster in terms of top end speed. I lost a lot of speed endurance. My power went up from like a short approach in terms of dunking. And then my high jump got way better, but my dunking actually got worse. So that started to shift my lens a little bit. And this is all like my personal experience as like a young athlete. Moving forward, I started to get, mentored and interned under Mike, and I'm around like all these high level track guys. And at that time, I think I knew that your squat is incredibly, incredibly valuable, and that I was jumping less, but I knew if I wanted to be a multi-event athlete, which was my goal, that my squat had to get way better. However, again, the mobility thing was like a big concern. So I was like, well, I see these CrossFitter guys, they're doing like 385, like Christian Williams at the time was deep squatting 385. We're talking his ass is like inches from the ground. I can't even do that in a half squat. Is it because I don't like I'm not trying hard enough, or what is it? So I forced all this range of motion, ended up fucking up my hips pretty good as a result. My knees were wrecked. This is before I knew anything about like tendon rehab and stuff like that and understanding how to make sure your tendons are staying healthy. So I move through that period of time. My vertical doesn't really budge in terms of dunking. And then I started dunking a lot. So now I'm dunking a lot and I'm deep squatting. That's where my knees went to shit, like worse than they'd ever been, because I wasn't one. I read that article about jumping every day. So I did that. That really messed me up. I go to Altus. They're like, look, if you jump twice a week, you'll be able to manage your load better. And then you just need to squat once or twice a week. So I was like, okay, cool. So I switched to that setup. I was jumping on Tuesdays and Fridays, and it just still wrecked me. 365 days later, I get that partial tear in my patella. So now my hips are fucked up. My back has been fucked up. My patella is partially torn, like from just pushing intensity and pushing range of motion. And it kind of opened my eyes to the importance of listening to your body, because I was always like we talked about this before the podcast, I was always influenced by all these strength conditioning coaches that were like, you have to deep squat, you have to deep squat, you have to deep squat. So I was like, fine, I'm going to deep squat. Deep squatting is probably the thing that has done more damage to my body, forcing positions than any other lift easily. RDLs didn't do that. Cleans didn't do that. Power snatch didn't do that. Even trying the full derivatives of the lift, jerk, calf raises, no. Deep squatting. What's that?
I feel the same way. Retweet.
Yeah, it has messed me up more than anything else. And no matter how much mobility work I did, I'm talking I would stretch for 2 to 3 minutes every single day before my session. Did that for 6 months plus, right? Hip distractions, ankle stretches, weightlifting shoes, just forcing that deep range of motion, especially in grad school, ruined me. So then as a young coach, I kind of was like, this is always my goal. This is always my goal. This is always my goal. I want to get this better. I want to get this better. After I tore my labrum from doing the same thing, deep squatting, I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. Like I'm 25 and I can't walk right now or jog because I keep trying to deep squat. And it's not for a lack of trying. It's not for a lack of doing mobility work. And in the back of my head, it's just reverberating. This is what all the strength coaches say in college. This is what all the strength coaches say in college. Or like, you know, track and field guys or whatever, you got to get your squat to 450, like all these made up standards from elite athletes. And I'm like, well, if I want to be elite, I got to do that. It just ended up destroying me. So that's my lens as an athlete. But then as a coach, I think what I started to view it as is if you can move well and if you have good movement quality, then you can deep squat and it's to your benefit to do so. But if you can't do it safely, if it's uncomfortable, like not because it's heavy weight, but because you feel impeded, as in when I flex my elbow, I don't feel any, I don't like, this is easy. I can do this full range of motion. It doesn't feel impeded. If I tried to do that full range of motion in a squat, I would feel tightness, pinching, all this other type of discomfort. I shouldn't be doing that. And that's because of my personal experience. And then also coaching you, like, I know that deep squatting played an integral role early on in helping you develop your vertical to where it is today. I know that it's played an integral role and it's playing an integral role in Donovan's, development, or Dom as well. These other elite, even Travis to some extent. But I also know that if you try to do that for the end goal of doing as much weight as possible or whatever else, in spite of your health, you're donezo. It does not matter. There's so many other metrics and things you can do that are beneficial. I used to think that half squatting wasn't good because of the weight on your back. And that's why, if you put less weight on your back and you full squat, it's going to be better. Wrong. Like if you put less weight on your back and you full squat and you don't have the mobility, it's going to mess you up. And it's probably not going to make you a better athlete. So
I really saw that last year. Last year I didn't deep back squat at all. And didn't touch it at all. Half squatting the whole time. And then I remember one random lift a few months ago, I did like a heels elevated deep back squat and it felt good. And then I did 405 like deep, which matched my all-time PR after not having done it for a year straight. And that's when I kind of realized it like shifted my lens of like if you just load up more weight in a half squat, it could potentially be better.
Yeah, I think it's just the cost benefit analysis. If you're a young athlete who's mobile, again, I think it is an integral part of your long-term athletic development and creating like a foundational, well-rounded athlete is being able to full squat. But as you get older, and I'm talking like basically past 18, maybe to 21, like past 21, if deep squatting starts to become really uncomfortable for you, or it never was comfortable, I really don't see a need for that. And this is part of the reason why I've started to move away from a lot of the traditional narrative around, because I'm definitely formally trained as a traditionalist in strength conditioning. I'm talking, what do the Russians, Eastern Europeans say? That's probably the biggest influence I have. And then Charlie Francis is a big influence for my coaching. Bush, Nader, and Dan are kind of like, now they're really moving into that kind of lens as like traditional coaches or old school coaches compared to the new school guys who are like, oh, let's swing this water bottle back and forth. I'm like, it's dumb as hell. So I would say where I've changed is being more open to a lot of the other machine-based loading that a lot of other coaches probably would shy away from. Like I don't see a leg extension machine in any strength conditioning weight rooms that I've ever been in. I mean, I'm talking Slippery Rock, no. Northern Michigan University, no. Olympic Training Center, no. Trying to think of where else I was at. Altus, no. And that was Phoenix with Exos. They didn't have one. Mike, no. He wanted a leg press, though. I will say that. I think now he has the eccentrics one, which is like the flywheel based one. But until I started to recognize with you specifically that we were limited, I mean, at this point, you've done how many mesocycles?
A lot.
Yeah. So you've done, I don't know.
I've done since 20. We started 2019. That's 5 years straight of
And
training.
then there was some
So the
before that.
max number is probably like 60, and I've probably spent on load management a year and a half maybe, of those. So 45 probably mesocycles, I wanna say. I
Yeah, which
got in
is 45 mesocycles. What is that in weeks?
for,
Times 4? It's like
180,
that's insane.
180,
So you've done
yeah,
180 weeks. So you've done 45 variants of a deep squat, basically. Like I don't tend to repeat.
essentially, yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
like try to implement some. And I realized that we were limited because again, when you have 45 variants of the same lift, I'm talking a back squat. I'm not talking a leg exercise. I'm talking a back squat, a deep back squat. Find 45 variants for me. That's a lot
yeah,
of the time what I mean, it just I realized that this is a limitation for you specifically. And I like a lot of foundational athletes to develop their back squat to a point where they run into that wall and say, okay, I'm having back issues, I'm having knee issues, whatever. Not that I'm trying to have that happen, but it's like get your back
inevitably,
squat
it
up.
kinda
Yeah,
is.
like it's like get your back squat up, listen to your body. If you find that your body's communicating with you that this is not a lift that's actually helping you and it's actually deterring from other things, well then the point of that is kind of like we're at the end of it. You know, there's other ways I can get a good neural stimulus, a
Yeah,
good muscular stimulus, a good tendinous, load. And I have to view the cycle in that lens of what are we trying to do right now, right? Like last cycle, we were trying to build the structures up. I want to see your cross sectional area go up, which it did. You gained muscle mass. I want to see your tendons get healthier, and I want to see the cross sectional area go up from hypertrophy work, which we saw. I want to see your bones get stronger, which we've exhibited from you almost breaking your hand in your face in the last 2 days. Um, like I want to see those changes happen. And then once I start to implement, intensity, I don't, yeah, I use squatting in some form, but like deep squatting specifically, it's a tool that is not, I don't want to say it's not that important because like it is long term and long term athletic development. But for elite athletes specifically, it's just not who have a crazy training age, it's not that important. I'll have you do it when possible. And I like to touch on it, specifically front squat. But even now, like what do you think the most you can put on your shoulders in a front squat and start to feel like the limitation is your legs or is your back and your spine and not your legs?
on a front squat?
Yeah. Like 320, if that.
Yeah, yeah, like if you were to give me if you had me do 315 per 5, if you like, I would start going like this type of thing, on it versus on my back. I mean, when I did half squats, I hadn't done half squatting I hadn't put weight on my back for like the last month and a half because I was deep back squatting and forcing positions. So we took them out, did only machines and front squat essentially. And then this last week, I was like, I'm healthy enough to start half squatting again. Put 425 on my back, did it for sets of 4. And after having front squatted exclusively for the last month, the
And when you say front
intensity,
squat, you mean deep front squat
yeah, deep front
or
squat versus heavy back squat. Same
half?
percentage. I was at 85% of my max.
You're saying half back squat.
Half back squat, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I got it. Got it.
The intensity wasn't even close. Like the half squats were so much more intense. And I always tell you this, John. Like I can always tell when something is specific and it's gonna make me jump higher. Like it's just sensational. Like the sensations I get, I can tell. And I was doing those squats and I was like, holy shit, like this
This
is
right here.
this right here gonna get my bounce up.
No, I know it's funny because we've ebbed and flowed between those two ideas. Like there's times whenever you've tested really well and we've been deep squatting a lot and you're like, dude, it just seems like it's so important for me to jump high as like being able to deep squat or deadlift. Like that narrative has changed over time. And I think it's because your lens on things compared to 2021 have changed. And now you're more long-term focused. You have a better lens of the long-term plan. Whereas in the past, you'd be tempted, I think, to be like, oh, well, I did like, but the first time you tested 50, right? You were deep squatting a lot and you were deadlifting a lot. And you're like, oh, it's just like deep squat's so important. Like I have to do it, whatever. And then, then since then you've done it, numerous times. We've done other things and we've seen your vertical or flight times match or even eclipse that,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah, like
so
plyos is a good example of that. Like,
yeah, right. Like
I
we're
learned
always
on
kind of
plyos is
learning and
huge. Yeah.
taking things in. But I will say, in terms of long-term athletic development, and I've said this multiple times, it is really crucial. If you want to be a truly elite athlete, being able to do that movement is really valuable. And I will say that athletes who are able to deep squat and aren't afraid to load it frequently will typically train harder and they will also see long-term more improvement. So there is a point where you still need to do it because it just teaches you how to push. It teaches you how to try hard. And like Corey Chisholm, he's another athlete. His deep squat was excessive whenever we first started coaching him, right? Like it was insane. And it
Yeah.
was basically to a point where we needed to develop his just force generating capacity. He would be another good, really
Yeah,
good.
he'd be a good video for you.
Yeah, because he was another Nathan, and I was like, dude, this kid's so bad. I was like, he spends an eternity on the floor when he goes to jump. Now he's like, he's really good. His power output is finally eclipsing mine in power clean. I started coaching him when he was like a junior in high school, and now he's really good. And his clean, I think he just hit 245. Like, just really has stayed the course and developed as an athlete and as a person. It's cool to see him kind of grow because again, he's like started working when he was in high school. Now he's post college, I think now. So
That's
yeah,
wild.
isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're seeing all our athletes
children.
grow up.
Our children are growing up. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And when you have like a long-term relationship with athletes too, it's really satisfying to kind of see them develop. And we get a lot of those questions of like, oh man, I want to work for you type stuff. And it's like you want to have those opportunities for people, but it's like so hard because we're just not a multi-billion-dollar company that can just hire a bunch of people. Like I wish. And we have a sick job, and I know that we enjoy coaching them and they enjoy working with us. So it makes sense, but it's like, seeing them develop as athletes is always fun and satisfying. But yeah, so I think as athletes develop further and further, you start to get a little bit more, you have the opportunity to be more creative. And that's not necessarily because you're limited on what you can do with a deep back squat. And that kind of works to your benefit, right? Like for you, I'm able to do super maximal loading with, a barbell half squat in a front rack. And then, or sorry, barbell front squat and a half squat. And then now it's like, okay, we've maxed that out. I'm forced to be creative. Like, what can I do on a leg extension machine? What can I do on a hack squat? What can I do with a belt squat now? Right. Like those are the things that as
Which
a coach,
hasn't shipped. Come on, Rogue.
broke. No, but I mean, it's just like I think squatting, I've really gone on a soliloquy here of
Put
extensive.
some heavy ass weight on your back and load it unless it hurts.
Yeah, that's like the simplified way to put it. But I want to hear now that I've kind of talked a lot. I'm gonna let you take the rest of the time on this podcast. Speaking your, what do
Yeah.
you think about deep squatting? Its importance for jumping athletes, 2 foot and 1 foot.
All right.
What's your experience?
My experience with it, first started squatting when I was in high school, around 15 years old. Read starting strength and then started lifting for basketball. And what's interesting, I was always influenced by Olympic weightlifting, and those are the most impressive deep back squats you will ever see in your life. And I remember being in high school strength and conditioning, like in basketball conditioning, and everybody would be squatting. I was the only one deep squatting, literally the only one. And
You really like that?
yeah, and the coaches, I would get into arguments with everybody, and I was like, "Nah, I've read starting strength, and I watch Olympic weightlifters. Like this is what's gonna help." So I always had, like you said, the old school S&C mentality. I always had that from the beginning. And it never really caused, I don't know if you're still there. I only
No,
see
I am.
myself.
I intentionally made you the
Okay,
full
okay,
screen.
okay. I it never caused issues, like, in terms of back pain and stuff like that. I had pretty good mobility. I actually worked on my ankle mobility in the beginning so that I could deep back squat, and it helped. There was never any pinching sensations and that type of thing. Um,
Would you
I also
say
think
you had naturally tight ankles?
mm, no, they were above average, but I worked on it even more because I just read that it's linked to your squat mobility. Um, but definitely above average mobility. I was actually talking to my dad about how all like me and all my siblings can deep squat. Even my daughter, like she's probably like she be sitting in a squat all day and stuff like that. So always had like the mobility for it. Um, Fast forward to I basically deep back squatted with no issues for a while. The only thing that was messing me up was deadlifting. My deadlifting technique wasn't too good. That's where I would get back pain. And then I only started getting back pain with squatting when I got to like the mid 300s. So I want to say. So when I actually started getting like strong with it, is when I started getting issues. And then basically did it on and off, but my lens on it didn't change. Like the stronger my deep back squat got, the higher I jumped, essentially. Whenever I got away from deep back squatting, uh the not higher, I would jump. So my lens was still the same. Now, the only thing that has changed is I think it's just load. Like it's putting a ton of load on your legs. And the best way to do that is putting a bunch of weight on your back. Uh I don't think it really, I mean, to be fair, I haven't tested it with like leg press or a hack squat. We haven't pushed that to its absolute limit. So my lens on it would probably change. Like, let's say if I were to only like hack squat and leg extension, heavy as hell, and leg press and belt squat, and I were to jump 51, my lens would probably change on it. But as of right now, nothing comes close to loading my legs the way just putting heavy ass weight on my back. What has changed is I don't really feel the same about it being deep. I think you can get really good results half squatting. It just has to be heavy. That's the thing. Is like there is this number that's 100% of your max, and you have to be at 80+% at some points of the year, at true 80+%. Because I see some of our athletes that I give shit to every single morning about not squatting heavy enough. I see so many guys they don't push that movement heavy, and I think that's one of the things that have separated me in terms of like results and jumping high. Is I push that shit to its absolute limit.
I think too, even if you can't do that specifically, I would say like I'm a good case for this where if I can't do that, I've tried quarter squatting 600 pounds and I'm like, shit, that really messed up my knees. Or like my PFP, or I'm like, okay, I'll do reverse lunges or I'll do leg extension or I'll do like you need to find some
Something.
substitute. Yeah. I think the benefit of deep back squatting is just so much bang for your buck. Like you
Yep.
get so much activity in your legs where you can just your neuromuscular system is just revved up to the max. And
Yeah.
that's to your benefit, right? You get a
It's
lot of motor recruitment, get a lot of rate coding, you recruit a lot of big important muscles for jumping really effectively in a short period of time. So it's like
yeah.
obviously going to be a really important tool, but there are a lot of cases where that is not an option. I'm one of those, that other athlete that you talk shit to in the morning. He might fall into that, and it's just important to find something else you can do that is still going to load your hip and your knee extensor, like your hip extensors and knee
Yeah.
extensors. So that's how I work around it. Like I do a lot of lunges, I do a lot of leg extension, that those are kind of how I've worked around it. I will squat, I'll half squat or whatever I do, it's like a just above half squat, like a little lower than a third squat. I don't even know.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I want to hear what else you were going to say about it.
No, that's pretty much it, to be honest. It's like you have to find something that you can push super heavy. I think I do remember what I was gonna say. I think technique is really freaking important. Like specifically maintaining a neutral spine and not losing that position mid rep is everything. Like if you're a young athlete, learn how to maintain a neutral spine when you're lifting, hinging and squatting. If you
Embracing.
if you do that and then basically avoid pinching in your hips, you're probably going to be able to squat for a long time. Like you're eventually, the limit is going to be you getting strong enough to the point where things start getting funky and start breaking and stuff like that. But it'll take a long time to get to that point. So like if you have a low training age, not a big history of injuries, like learn how to lift with a neutral spine, maintain that position. And I think there's a lot of carryover, like to being strong in that position to jumping. Because when you're jumping, you don't want your spine falling in half.
No, yeah. What's funny, I think a lot of people that, at least I was kind of guilty of this in terms of bracing. I was like, oh yeah, like you do angulate a little bit at your spine, or there is like some movement in the pelvis or whatever else. But if that chassis is stiffer, then it probably has better elasticity and you leak power less. And as you've gotten better, I've noticed that. And a lot of athletes that maintain health for a long time, same thing, right? Like they don't have a lot of flexibility in their spine when they jump. It's very minimal. And you guys are really effective at storing and releasing energy in that type of takeoff. Whereas athletes that don't, they're going to have more issues. Like
And
Travis.
neutral isn't like, if you want to get into the nitty gritty, it's never neutral. Like,
Yeah.
any kind of squatting, there's going to be movement at the spine, but I think it's just trying to minimize that as much as possible. And there's a range, like your discs, right? There's like a range, and then as soon as you put a shit ton of weight and you move a little too far, and you're gonna bulge some shit, and it's not gonna be fun.
What idea you said the other day? You saw an idea that was like, it was like, oh yeah, load on the spine isn't the driver mechanism for back pain. And I'm like,
Oh
that's the
yeah,
dumbest shit I've ever seen. I'm
yeah.
like,
I was like,
you put 1,000 pounds on your back and you let me know if that's not the driver of your back pain. Okay. Like, what are you
yeah,
talking about? And
yeah,
it is, I think the other thing people don't realize, it's a torque equation. So it's not only the weight on your back, but it's what the moment arm is relative to the weight on your back at each vertebral disc, right? So like at each spine column. And as you go deeper in a squat, the likelihood that torque goes up is, it's basically one, like it will, it's going to go up, the shear force, compression force. And then people are like, well, I'm a PT and there's research that says that you can just progressively load it and it's fine. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. But I coach literally like thousands of athletes over the last couple of years. And I'm telling you, we load our spine more than maybe anyone else.
yeah.
And it is directly related, the load that you put on your
I was
back to
also
back pain.
I was also gonna bring that up because you could progressively load and start really light and
We've
work your
done
way
it
up,
multiple times. And what
but
happens when you get to the big weights?
well, not just that. I think it's a time thing. Like if you would have spent, let's say, progressing up your deep back squat so that you can like handle those loads. I think the time spent doing that progression, if you would have just trained with a neutral spine with higher loads, you would have made more gains on your vertical jump, been just as healthy, and be at a like you'd be farther
Yeah.
along
Like
basically
it's not the exercise, it's the biological processes that are happening as a
yeah.
result, which
Because
is
I could technically stop training how I'm training, like, and then just decrease intensity on everything, start improving my range of motion and all that stuff, and feel better day to day. Arguably, that's even not
an
that
option.
might not even be true. Um, but we're concerned with driving up performance.
Yeah. I think too, like if I only cared about athletes feeling good and not improving, I'd be like, yeah, just get on the leg extension. Don't push into any pain. Always stay at like 50%, move the weight, like 4 sets of 10, do that for just stay on machines, do that. And don't jump, don't sprint.
Yeah. So
Just
feel
go
good
play your
lift,
sport occasionally and like, you'll be
feel
fine.
good yeah.
Yeah, but if my goal was to, like, it's a good tool for for, like I said, those biological processes. Not that you need it. Like if I want to get a good neural stimulus, I could technically sprint. I could jump. I could do a deadlift. I could do
Yeah.
a lunge at heavy weight. I could do an ISO, overcoming ISO or yielding ISO. Like there's a lot of other tools. It's just that those have other downsides that the
It's
a
risk.
deep squat
It's
offers you.
our job is literally risk analysis. It's like
Yeah,
the things that are gonna improve your vertical the most are also the riskiest in terms of injury. and
like
you have to,
jumping every day.
yeah, yeah. So it's just weighing that, and then and it needs analysis. Like, how healthy is the athlete? What has he done in the past? Is he able to handle this training? And as a general rule, if we're at a 3 or less in pain and it's not getting worse, then we're gonna go on that riskier side of things. If your pain's getting worse, then we're gonna dial it back a little bit and do the safer route. But
Yeah.
I think, to conclude, we love to back squat as low as your mobility allows. Learn to squat with a neutral spine and good technique.
Expect that later on in your athletic career, it's gonna be less important.
Yeah, yeah. As you get stronger and better, you're probably gonna get hurt, and you're probably gonna have to do other exercises.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Well,
where
if you
if you want training, by the way,
yeah.
go to
go to
THPStrength.com.
THPStrength.com. And if you guys have listened to this point, I'd be curious if someone is brave enough, go listen to the old podcast on this topic or the last couple that we've done on Transistor or YouTube. Find it, listen to it, and give us like a list of like, in this year you guys thought this, and this year you guys thought this, and this is where they're currently at. Because I think it would be cool to just kind of see like edition 2, edition 3, edition 4 revised, to see how we've changed. But that being said, yeah, if you want that individualized level of specificity or individuality, that's what we do. We're the best at it, and I have no problem saying that. Go to THPStrength.com and sign up, and we'll get on a call with you. We'll help you achieve your goals in whatever way we can. We're super passionate about it. I love training. Isaiah loves training, and we want to share that with you guys. So that being said, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.